Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Module 4, our professional development on addressing the needs for culturally responsive teaching through the medium of a literacy program at Roxbury High School. As just mentioned, right, the most important need that Roxbury High School has right now is that of a total literacy program. Currently, it's up to the teachers using whatever resources they find adequate and curriculum to help students master different literacy needs. However, there's no formal assessment, there's no guidelines, there's no collaboration or necessary collaboration between peers. And this need comes from recent state data that shows that year after year there are a multitude of academic achievement gaps, and there are a number of students kind of going downhill, specifically for like ELA. And again, if you want to talk about discipline literacy, which we will get to in a minute, math scores have gone down tremendously. So having a literacy program, whether it be school-wide or in some cases district-wide, would be a fantastic approach to help all students, to help all staff, and to help families and the greater educational community understand what's expected of them. So, as mentioned, right, there was a couple of evidence-based strategies we're going to look into today that can help different groups. So one is the establishment of digital literacy skills early on. And that may not be necessarily appropriate for high school levels, but it would definitely help if we had a district-wide policy, right, getting on board about early digital literacy skills, right? We are dealing with strictly pretty much digital natives now, and students have, access to technology from a young age, and getting them using that for educational purposes is very important. Using things like Jolly Phonics. And again, maybe sounds a little elementary, but Roxbury High School has a large population of ELL students, as well as a severely disabled program. So these programs can help there as well. You have things like identifying different needs for special ed versus gen ed, right? Especially at the high school level, sometimes it's hard to differentiate, especially if students take electives like criminology, where you could have a large mix of students. So identifying what different needs, being able to process data, we use a system called Linkit that can help with that. Co-teaching and collab for ELL students. Again, like mentioned earlier, there's a large population, and those students look to be immersed in regular classes. You can't just isolate them and hope for the best. The goal is to have them graduate just as much as anyone else. So collaboration, working with that ELL teacher in the building, or teachers in Roxbury High School's case, and learning different strengths and weaknesses. And then last but not least, focusing on discipline literacy. So as students get to the high school, they should be focusing things on discipline. For example, we have a program at Roxbury, the Structural Design Foundations class, where students learn to build houses, sheetrock, drywall, insulation, electrical, plumbing. So if students can learn to read those kinds of diagrams and maps and blueprints and schematics, right, that could be an effective tool. So you don't just have literacy skills like learning to read or phonics or stuff like that, but you have discipline-focused literacy skills, which I think is probably the most applicable in the here and now for teachers at Roxbury. So connection to school-based plans, right, it's paramount, right? There's a lot of that goes into helping students at Roxbury, and that's all students, right? Culturally relevant resources. You have professional development for teachers. You have understandings from families and the greater community as a whole. So having this initiative, right, puts some purpose into things like professional development. It puts an agenda, right, moving forward for students and families and what to expect. So this is all kind of connected, and having this kind of agenda moving forward shouldn't, high tide rises all boats. It should impact all facets of student life, and that way all staff members can kind of get on board as well. So digital media, and again, I mentioned earlier, these students are digital natives, right? They have access to tools and technology from the day they're born. So we need to, educators, which again, some of these, some teachers at Roxbury are north of 50, some are 60, right? They are not as, fluent in technology. So one of the best things to do is to make sure teachers are up to snub, at least to the best of their ability. Right, so in regards to using things like how to use AI, right, that's a relatively new thing. Students already are obviously using it on a wide scale, so teachers need to be able to keep up and use them for a productive thing. So having these students, and again, things like AI, and then how do you infuse that with cultural responsive teaching, right? Bringing in adequate resources, bringing in different approaches to cultural pedagogy. So one of the most important things is to make sure that teachers are up to snub. The other one is when you look at things like CRT and digital literacy, there is a lot, right? So it can be overwhelming, but one of the main things that educational leaders need to do, and the school as a whole, is to break down the different aspects of CRT, right? Where can we improve now? Where can we improve in 2 years and 5 years? And what does our student population look like now? What does it look like? What does the demographics say for 5 to 10 years? So to get ahead of those curves and to break it down, one or two things a year can be a lot more, manageable, as opposed to just saying, okay, we need to do digital literacy and CRT. So breaking it down, getting ahead of the curve, using demographics coming from the elementary schools, we can, appropriate our resources, our pedagogy, our professional development, in a much more successful way. So one of the lessons, we talked about a lesson plan last week in regards to where do we even start without a literacy plan. And the one thing was to gauge 10th grade students in regards to discipline and digital literacy. Again, those are just some aspects of literacy as a whole, but they are important at the high school level. And what it showed that, we broke down students from Gen Ed, from Special Ed, from ELL, and, we had a couple of staff members involved. And it was a general idea of, okay, what is digital literacy? What is discipline literacy? How can you use it? Could you explain it to a friend right now? And kind of that getting a finger on the pulse sort of thing. And then, okay, how do you best use it? What sources do you use? And again, we focused on history. It was just one of the disciplines, but it was what sources can you pull? Are they good sources? Are they verified? Can you create it in your own way using different mediums? So after having pulled that out, right, and grading via a different kind of rubric, we're not looking for like, oh, you did a fantastic job and you talked about X, Y, and Z. It's, okay, well, how well did you use media, digital platforms, and such? With a couple of survey questions, right, we are looking forward to, right, are our resources academically and culturally appropriate, right? What can we do to kind of close achievement gaps between students, right? We know that at Roxbury High School, less than 10% of ELL students passed ELA state assessment data last year, right? How can we improve those numbers? Whereas in, even things like male, female, right? Where females were about 52% passing rate, males are about 42%. So how do we improve just the gender gap there as well? And that comes through different resources, right? And we talked about it earlier, different professional development, different getting families involved, right? Bringing the community in. So there's a number of different things. Anticipating pushback. So first things first, we're about to lose $2 million in our budget next year. $7 million over the next 3 years. So where do those resources come from? And again, as we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of veteran teachers. Are they going to buy in, right? It's going to be up to the job of educational leadership to talk about, why is this the best practice moving forward? An invitation for feedback. So in a second, we'll talk about a survey, right? And do you have friends, right? Do you have peers? Do you have colleagues that work in other schools that may have a literacy program already, right? We're open. It's a collaborative effort, as we kind of push forward for this for this literacy program as a whole. So here's some survey questions, right? Talking about kind of where we are now and where we would like to go, using things like professional development. And then do we have things like assessment practices, right? Are we keeping that in mind as we move forward? Right? And would you like to be a part of this? It isn't for everybody, right? Some people don't feel as comfortable, or maybe they don't know as many practices, or they're not up to snub, right? But if you are able and willing, it would be fantastic to work together. And then here are just some references, all right? And that's it. So as we move forward with our literacy program, right, there's a lot of things to tackle, but we have some steps in the right direction and some resources to start with, and some gauges that we've already looked at. So it's not an impossible task. It's just one that we need to care for and work towards. So thank you.